nobody in the classroom answered the question. So for the folks on the phone, I just want to know if anybody had, so you've had a couple weeks off. Ideally, you have been continuing to do customer discovery. So you should have learned things that that you didn't expect to in the beginning. And I just want to know if anybody wanted to share any of that. If there's anything that any observations that you had. So I'll throw it out, since nobody in the classroom bid on that. I'll throw it out to Dan and Tim and Jason online. If there's anybody, anything that you picked up over the last couple of weeks that you want to share up front.
Sure, this is Tim for the quick TLS team. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, hear you great.
Great. Yeah, I'll just give you 30 seconds or a minute. We've had a handful of calls, contacted a good number of people so far. And, you know, the big thing that we're hearing is we may be a little early to the game as far as quick goes. Actually, it turns out, except for the actual implementers who I've called, who are actually kind of paving the way for everybody else in terms of inventing the protocol, nobody else that we had talked to really had even heard of it, or if they had heard of it, it only was anecdotal. So it seems we're a little early on that front. On the other hand, the TLS front seems to be a little more interesting to them, you know, for a number of reasons that they've shared. So we've sort of, I wouldn't call it a hard pivot exactly, but we're definitely angling more towards the TLS side of things, hearing that that's sort of what people are focusing on. So
if I can ask a question, then why did you think these things were together? And it seems like maybe they're pretty far apart.
Yeah, they are and they aren't, and it's because of just the way the protocol stack is structured. But basically, Quick relies on quite a few of the components and building blocks that are TLS 1.3. So in other words, they go in hand in that if you're doing something related to TLS 1.3, sooner or later you'll be doing something related to Quick, and it's not necessarily a huge lift to get there. Though it is true, you certainly can do it without Quick. I think Quick is sort of the, you know, it's the next generation. It's where things should be going. So, you know, I think we were surprised by it. I think we'd be, you know, would have expected a few more people to be heading down that direction, and they weren't, you know, so.
Okay. Well, we'll get back to you in a little bit. We should be able to get through everybody today and talk about the value proposition. Anybody else have an observation they want to share real quick?
Yeah, well, so in our most recent version of questions, which I think we're on version 5 or 6 of our questions, and we're up to about 20 interviews. But at the same time, we narrowed down regionally to who we began to talk to, and they've been struggling with if cities and towns are a customer. Does that mean small, large, rural, urban? It's become very clear that none of that matters, and that what we're really focused on is where they are in their redevelopment process. And so, and it's very clear there's space for us if you want to get started or you want to maintain some momentum and have limited capacity. So that was really helpful.
Yeah. All right. One more time, anybody? Just we're gonna ask you to come up. So I just didn't know. I want to talk about the shocking things, and then we'll have a chance to go through. Hearing none, would anybody like to? Who would like to volunteer or be voluntold to go first? And what I'd like you to do, all right, once you come up, is however you can figure out how to share it. Is everybody in box? You have them. So why don't you? Can you drive?
Yes.
Beth will drive. Come up front. I'm going to flip the cameras so the folks online can actually see you. And yeah, come on up. I'll mess with the cameras a little bit while you're. Oh, don't zoom in. Yes. All right. Just make so they should be able to pick up. Those things work really well, but just theater voice and So the objective here, since this is really the first time we've done it, is I want you to really stick to, for the moment, I want you to stick to the circle, to the customer needs. Talk a little bit about, we can all read, or this one's a little hard to read, which is problem one. It's very small. No, it's not his first, there's so many words. So, but to talk through why what's there is there, and then I'll keep a timer. We'll try to do, roughly 10 minutes a group, if shorter if we need to, not longer. But I do want everybody in the room or the folks that are online to make comments. And so this is where you get to learn from each other. So don't be polite, but be direct. So saying somebody is stupid is not great. Saying I literally don't understand why you're approaching the problem that way is not great, is within bounds. So with that, you go ahead.
So remind everybody who you are, what you're doing.
Yeah, so my name's Cameron. I'm from the Seeking Capital Partners group, and we're trying to build a solution that allows students to have access to capital in a different form and function than they currently do to finance their higher education. And so early on in the customer discovery process, what we kind of came to the semi-rude awakening of is our customer dynamic is such that there's three kind of underlying customer groups. We've got investors, and then we've got institutions of higher ed, and then we've got the students / parents / people seeking the higher ed themselves. And that made things a little more complicated for us and forced us to think about what are we delivering to each of these particular groups, and what are they asking for from us in order for this whole thing to gel. So in the customer job section, we kind of broke it down by group to address investors. Their job is really just delivering returns to their clients. So they could give a shit what we or our other clients want. Their only concern is delivering returns to their clients. That's their mandate, period, end of discussion. So that being the case, how do we create a framework whereby the academic institutions and students can participate in this process in using the academic institutions as a gatekeeper through which the investors can provide that capital to students, and that aligns the incentives of the investors, students, and higher educational institutions in lockstep. So we, in our understanding and our current hypothesis, so to speak, is that the best way to do that is through these income share agreements, which are basically.
I don't want you to talk about the other side.
Okay.
I want you to stick on the customers. So you're not selling, remember, we're trying to, let's focus on your customer, and I'll throw the first bomb of the day. All investors want returns in excess of market, so why are they a customer?
Why are they a customer?
Yeah, I mean, great. You offer them a 5% return, somebody else offers them a 5% return, why do they care about you?
Well, so
Wouldn't an investor just want the most money for the least amount of effort?
they would, and so one of the things that within the investor umbrella, one of the things that we have to take into consideration is what investors can we actually have providing capital, and the reality is that those investors are pretty, not limited, but it's specific entities that we can source capital from, and in particular, they're institutional asset managers and typically alternatives.
So you answered part of the question. So your customer is not investors, because somebody who's investing in a real estate asset is not your investor.
Correct.
Your investor is a, say it again.
Institutional asset manager.
Right. That's your customer. You get the difference?
Yeah, no, I was trying to keep it really simple, but.
No, don't, and actually, because the problem is, if you remember from a couple weeks ago, so you've got 3 customers, which means you have 3 value propositions, which means you have 3 different things to say. And it's I know I was going to say in the early stages, but we're already here, is focus on one thing. Just know one thing about one person or one person you're trying to solve, and then try to expand. Because if you try to satisfy 3 different customer bases, I know they're interrelated, I'll get there. You're just going to sort of be doing this all the time. So focus in on your, who is your most important customer?
Well, if the investors don't provide the capital, then there is no product. So
Okay.
you got to start there. And there's kind of 2 avenues for that. There's the truly alpha-seeking private investors, and then there's university endowments. And it's our opinion that we have to kind of pursue both of these in lockstep. On the one hand, the private investors, a fund that likes it is just going to invest that. They're not going to wait. They're pulling the trigger. They're saying, here's the capital, go distribute it. A university endowment could take years to get them to wrap their heads around it because the nature of those entities is that they are much more bureaucratic and much more slow moving.
But what's the problem? I know you stated the problem, but what's the problem you're trying to solve, and which of those three things that you listed?
For investors,
For any of them.
So for investors, the problem we're trying to solve is, one, give them a vehicle by which they can diversify their risk and get efficient returns with relatively low volatility or beta. And in addition to that, this is something where private investment firms have historically over the past several years been talked about as, oh, they have all this dry powder, meaning stacks of cash that's uninvested. This is a way for them to add basically an entirely new asset class to their portfolio allocation and utilize that dry powder so that it's not earning treasury rates, so that it's actually earning them a return.
Go back and say the
So
same
have
thing.
they typically been shut out of this process?
This process hasn't really existed in any significant capacity outside of 8 or 10 universities and colleges across the country, and those short-term boot camp style 26-week, whatever it is, training programs where you pay 40 grand and you go learn to code, or you go learn to do one specific thing, executive ed, whatever. There are a handful of those programs that have implemented a similar version of this, but outside of that, this is not being conducted in any significant form or fashion at present.
So I'm going to ask again, what problem are you trying to solve? So hang on. Investors want returns, totally get it. Investors want to diversify returns, totally get it. What is the problem? So you could do this or something else. Like, it doesn't matter. If I say to an investor, I'll give you 6% return, they go, sure. Like, whatever the asset class is under. But you're choosing something specific to do. So I don't think you've talked about the problem yet. You've talked about pleasing someone. Okay. But what's the problem that this gives someone something that they've never had before?
Well, right now, the reason why they have the dry powder is that there's crowded spaces in the markets they've traditionally invested, private equity, et cetera.
So this is all about investors. It has nothing to do with students or the university.
No, but I thought we were.
No, I know. I'm actually trying to get you to narrow down a little bit and say.
So are we narrowing down, or are we hitting all three?
I want, so you said your most important customer was the investor or the institute, but I don't believe you. Okay. How's that? Okay. So what is you're creating this business. Who's getting the most out of it? Who's getting the thing that they can't get any other way? Is that, I mean, do you believe
Yeah, I do believe that, but the students can't get that thing without the investors.
True. But if the students don't agree, and none of this is right or wrong, I'm poking at you for
I appreciate the
for a reason.
It's
So
necessary.
if the students don't come, the investors have nothing to give.
Correct. And the idea here, and the reason why academic institutions are kind of listed as a client in and of themselves, as opposed to just the endowments in that investor group, is because the reality is for us to actually get into the hearts and minds of students, there's no realistic way to do that other than to have actual schools put this on their financial aid list and facilitate the process through that medium.
Right. So the schools are the only people that have relationships to both sides.
Yeah, they're the middleman.
Talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about what their pain is, the pain of the schools, the thing they need done.
The thing they need done is they need students to be able to attend their schools and actually pay one way or another full freight, rather than basically writing off losses against the aggregate total tuition number by subsidizing the attendance of individual students with scholarships or whatever else.
Okay.
And in facilitating this in a way where the students are not being issued debt, where they own the risk entirely in themselves, it allows the students to have the access to that capital while providing the academic institutions the ability to reduce their overall downside.
So hold there for a second.
Does anybody, I got lots of questions, but if anybody wants to jump in. All scared. Go ahead.
So state it a little more simply for the student, the problem you're solving.
So right now, student debt's a huge, huge problem.
No, don't give me background.
Okay.
Just tell me the problem for the student.
The problem is the student is being served horrifically by the current framework for financing higher ed. The
Can you
incentives,
say it more simply? Getting served horrifically, that's
Students are
How?
getting screwed.
How?
yeah,
what would the students say?
Because they
How
can't
would they
get loans or
articulate
they're
that?
too-
I mean, well, so the kind of vicious cycle that we've seen since federal student loans were started in the 50s is that the access to cheap money has allowed schools to raise fees and tuition and invest a ton of money that they can't afford to invest otherwise, which allows them to further raise fees, which and kind of feeds on itself. That's how we've gotten here. And so it's chicken or the egg, was it the cheap money or was it, the rising costs?
Maybe I'm misunderstanding
Yeah.
what you're trying to do, but I would think the student says, I can't go to school. My problem is I can't go to school if I can't find a way to pay for it.
I think in aggregate, that problem is kind of solved in that there is so much access to debt capital, but the problem is that debt capital, once they graduate, cripples them. And now they can't buy a house until they're 40, and they pay 4x the principal and interest or more. And a lot of them are coming out of school with $50,000 or $100,000 more in debt. The average nationally right now is over 40K. So, I mean, it's just a total crisis.
Don't you think that that generation of students that's facing that kind of debt will then think seriously, think twice about even sending their children to school? This is an unaffordability problem at the end of the day. You're facing a generation of people who understand what that debt really means. And for their children, college will be unaffordable.
That's the trajectory we're on, yes, and I think that by creating a system that requires accountability on all parties, not just the students.
I hear you.
Yeah.
We want you to articulate a problem, right? Like, I don't want to hear about the solution. I want
Right.
to hear about the problem. Clearly.
So the problem for students is, like I said, it's twofold. It's the cost and it's the debt. And so you can look at it as rising costs, or you can look at it as they take out all this debt, but the rising costs lead to more debt. And
So I'm gonna try again. Let's do this, right? All right, so it's not I won't go to school.
Mhm.
You told me that's not the problem. What you said.
I agree with
So
you.
now, what am I gonna say? I'm not gonna go to that school because I'm gonna have too much debt after I graduate?
I think that's starting to enter the narrative of more people.
Okay, I don't wanna be the one answering that question. I want you to say, what's the
Well,
problem?
So what you just addressed, I think, is, I don't think previously it was so much of a thing where, I won't go to that school because people just assumed, I'm going to take out these loans, I'm going to get a great job, I can pay them off. And now that narrative is starting to become developed because people are seeing the aggregate debt that exists. So I think it's an affordability problem, but the affordability problem creates a debt problem. And in that sense, it's not so much that I won't go to school, but it's what's the long-term effect on my ability to have a happy, fulfilling life of going to school if I can't otherwise afford it in its current format.
Well, students just want less debt.
Yeah, and that's what this is.
But you're taking a piece of their earnings, right? So
Correct. It's an insurance policy on the downside. For them, it's like a downside insurance policy, and for the investors, it's an upside bet on the students. Investors are predicting that the average student is going to earn enough to pay off what they borrowed, and students are taking out a hedge in the instance that their education doesn't deliver on that promise.
In this case, aren't they basically betting that if you're successful, then you're going to, I assume it's a percentage of income and not a flat amount.
Correct.
And so you're basically assuming that you won't make enough that getting a traditional loan would be less expensive. So
It's
you're
not so
betting
much.
against it.
It's not so much that you're betting you won't make enough. It's that you're you're diversifying your own personal risk as a person, as a student, so that you're not stuck holding the bag if things don't go exactly the way the school projected they would or you thought they might.
But like, if you were to look at this plan and say, yeah, that looks great, I don't have the debt, but say I do really, really well for myself, I'll end up paying 4 times what I would have paid if I had taken out loans.
So that's the thing. There's 2 ways that you can cap out on this. Agreements have a duration. They're a fixed period of time, and it varies based on major and other risk factors. I'll spare you the details on that. Or a multiple of the underlying amount borrowed or advanced, what have you. So typically that has ranged between 2 and 3x. So you're not going to be paying anywhere near what people tend to often pay when they take out high balance loans. Because the duration of time that goes by the time they pay off, a lot of students are paying 3, 4, 5x and more. So
I'm gonna
Well, you
stop
wouldn't have
you.
made that 4x if you didn't have the education to begin with.
correct. So, and if it didn't pan out that way, you're not stuck holding as much of the bag as if you had taken out loans.
So I'm gonna ask one clarifying thing and then one last question and then we'll move on. So
Aren't universities already addressing this problem by giving grants and scholarships to the highest potential students when they're coming in? So they're already sorting out what your potential is, and if you've got high potential, you've got a free ride with a scholarship. And
But
they
there's no
expect to get this paid back when you get your job, because you owe it to them, because they gave you a scholarship.
But that's not a sustainable method because you're kind of basing your faith in them that they're going to donate to the university in the future, assuming they hit the lottery and really kill it. And from there, it's also that so to use like a money recycling metaphor, if I throw money at you in the form of a scholarship, I just burnt that money in a giant fire. If I give money to you in the form of an ISA and you just do the average well that we expect you to do, the principal amount that you were advanced gets paid back, and now someone else can borrow that in the next store. So that's kind of the premise, is it's a more sustainable, long-term, self-funding form of finance.
So I'm gonna just ask you to do over the next week to do a clarifying thing. So, and I'm old, right? The interest rate on my student debt was 3%. So under no circumstances would I ever pay a multiple. And I had a lot of student debt. I had debt from business school, I had debt from my undergrad.
Were they federal or private?
They were federal, right? So what I think
And that's not our competitor.
What I think you need to do, though, is you need to better articulate the story. Because, like, if I get a Pell Grant is one thing, but there's a lot of low interest debt, and there are companies who all they do is take the high interest debt and repackage it and give you, try to give you a lower interest rate over a long period of time. So, so I think that from the student perspective, I'm not sure that you've really articulated the value to the students, because if you're taxing, we're in New Hampshire, so we only talk about taxes because we hate taxes, right? So if you're taxing my income by 3%, say you're taking 3% of my earnings, right? That's still debt. I still owe you 3%. It's not debt the way normal people think about debt, but I don't get the full use of the money, right? The thing that you said that I actually bought, and I'm not saying the whole idea, right? But the thing you said that I bought was you're taking a university and you're giving them away to get fully paid for something that they might have given a scholarship, right? Well, you barely ever said that in all of this stuff, right? So instead of attracting that student and saying, I've got a great student, they're a genius math person and I want them here, and why do we give scholarships? We give scholarships because we want you to give us the money back as a donation someday soon. We want you to graduate from here because we love you, or we think you're going to burnish the image of the institution, right? You've sort of articulated a way for me as the university to get the full amount of money back when I normally would have given you the education for free. That I find compelling.
Plus 60% for Purdue English majors.
Those are the specific, but I think what I'd like you to do over the next week is take that nugget that we've just unearthed and focus on that, with your interviews on this one thing. And you can talk to the investors and you can talk to the students, but focus on that general concept. Try to pull that out a little bit. Because that part I actually
Academics for a little while.
Yeah. And that part I kind of buy a little bit better. Okay, great. Thank you. Who's next?
We'll go next.
All right, you guys go.
Kristen, I don't have yours.
Actually, she'll throw it up here.
I don't have him.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, yeah.
Did you email
I
it?
can email it to you, yeah.
Okay. How about someone else while they do that?
Dropbox.
Who's next? You guys want to go? All right.
She's been here like 12 years ago. The idea for Dropbox.
Never. I do.
Did I manage not to sell so hard?
A little bit, a little bit, yeah, there.
Forward progress?
Forward progress, absolutely. I think your issue is it's complex and you're relishing in the complexity as opposed to really trying to teach it to a third grader. That's the objective, is keep it simple.
Ian, have I heard that before?
We have literally never talked about this. So I'm just like, that's,
Oh, he's heard the same.
Yeah, no, I know. But that's part of it is like, if you can explain it to a third grader and have them spit it back to you, that's the right level to explain the idea to a mixed audience. Right? And you're like, that's really hard, except Schoolhouse Rock said, if I borrow $1, I pay you back $1 and a dime. Schoolhouse Rock explained interest rates in a phrase, right?
So now I know my homework is I have to go watch.
Go watch Schoolhouse Rock. All right, let's go.
Focus on the customer side.
Yes.
I'm Molly Donovan. I'm representing Main Street Academy. The customer for Main Street Academy that we're focusing on in this version is cities and towns, or sometimes we just say communities, but it's specifically cities and towns. And so cities and towns are responsible for economic development and making sure that they have a thriving economic center, which is up in their Main Street or their downtown or their village center. Their pains is that often Main Street is lacking investment and looks bad, and there's no civic pride, and people are spending their dollar elsewhere outside of their Main Street. And through Main Street Academy, the gain should be for the customer that there's investment downtown, there's leadership through volunteers, and municipal staff providing change to downtown. That it's a vibrant place where things are happening, whether they're activities or businesses are locating or expanding. The perception of Main Street or downtown is improved, so civic pride increases, which often leads to more engaged community members, more leadership, more investment.
So that's where you're going to say something. So let's go through these. Let's go through this one at a time. So, all right. So the jobs are these towns. The jobs are, what does your customer need to get done, right? They need a thriving Main Street, right? Is that, like, if I took all those words and shrunk it down, they need a thriving Main Street. Why?
Because the community values Main Street as a symbol of the health of their community.
Okay, so a thriving Main Street makes you feel good. I'm not being pejorative, just.
That's what we learned in the interviews, yeah.
Okay. What does thriving mean?
So thriving means that what's defined as Main Street or downtown looks active, feels active, is attractive, is welcoming, is a place where community comes together, seen as the heart of the community, and it also has businesses. So there's an economic piece.
So you described that in a way that was almost the exact opposite of what I would have expected you to say. Okay, so talk about that a little bit.
So I come to this work to do economic development work, which is there's recruiting businesses, expanding businesses, growing businesses on Main Street. And what our interviews are telling us is the highest value to a place on Main Street is this sense of community and community center and bringing people together. And then they say, oh, right, yeah, and there's businesses, and that's good too. So they always get to it, but it never, the economic piece doesn't come up on top when we're doing our interviews. So that has surprised us too.
So do you think it's possible to have a thriving center community, a thriving Main Street without business?
Yes, we teach that and we can accomplish that.
Okay.
And what that is, that goes back to my earlier comment about communities that are starting a revitalization process, is that often there are things that you can do to be vibrant and meet those needs of your community before your community is ready for public or private investment or business investment.
Main Street a physical place?
Yes, but it's defined differently in every community.
Go through that a little bit.
In some communities, people assume it's very, very traditional, historic buildings, very close to the street, on either side of the street with sidewalks. In other communities, they describe that as four corners with maybe a business and a library and community park. And so we're using Main Street, downtown, village, all interchangeably. In front of that is sort of regional.
Yep.
In terms of how, in
How big or
Vermont,
small
people say village more than in New Hampshire, we tend to say Main Street more.
Got it. Okay. So now let's talk about the pains, and again, the pains are what happens to your customer if their jobs are not served. So what do they feel? So you say a lack of leadership. I think that's more of a result,
Yes.
not necessarily what happens if.
So so I'm not gonna look at the list.
Yeah, yeah.
Somebody raised a question, help me think about it a little better. So the pains that community leaders feel are the criticism of their community members, which is loud and often, the lack of the perception of that you're not a thriving community and you're not successful. They will talk about the pain of lack of investment and not really taxes, but more the idea that we want people to be spending money downtown.
Okay. Now let's move to the top. So and I have to say that to repeat this just so that it gets in there. Not for you, but for everybody. So the gain is for the customer, if that job gets satisfied, the benefit of the job being satisfied to the customer is, so you have a thriving so the need is a thriving Main Street, the gain is a thriving Main Street. What do they get? What does that town get when they go from non-thriving Main Street to thriving Main Street?
They get increased activity, increased investment, more civic engagement, and more leadership and civic pride.
So how does the civic engagement piece work? So like
Is
how
part
do
of the product or?
So okay, you have a thriving Main Street. How does civic engagement change?
You could spend a whole hour on this, but okay. So so that's a foundational.
2 minutes and 38 seconds.
So that is a foundational piece of Main Street Academy, is that we will teach cities and towns how to engage their community members in the process to revitalize their Main Street.
So, I just broke, how is it measured?
Civic pride or any of it. So yes,
I mean, how do I?
so we actually have instruments that we use in terms of, you can measure investment obviously by, just if there's public or private investment in terms of dollars, that's easy to measure. In terms of civic engagement, we measure that by how many people for the first time come to a committee meeting, how many people join a committee, who becomes a leader, what kind of leadership they bring. So we're accustomed to measuring that already. And we measure leadership that way as well. And we measure that over time because usually civic leaders, there's a long period of time where people go through that process of early engagement to civic leadership. On the activity, communities, what we would look at is how many events did they have, how many businesses opened, how many businesses expanded, how many people were downtown at certain times of the day, did the parking change?
wouldn't you have rising property values in a vibrant town? As a simple overall measure, that your rents would be going up, your property values would be going up.
Over time, yeah.
And actually related to that is, I think of Flint, Michigan or somewhere where people leave, right? Because it's not a community they want, or property values go down, which means tax revenue goes down. So I'm surprised you said tax once, but surprised either unstated or stated, like tax revenue has to be part of that thought process, particularly if a board of selectmen or something like that, I would think.
So I love that you said that because our team has been talking about that. We've not heard that once in the interviews, and we've run Main Street Academy twice in New Hampshire. And I think one person brought up taxes or property values. So I agree, it's a part of the formula, but it's interesting that people aren't talking about it. And interesting in New Hampshire, they're not talking about it.
So, and that was actually where I was headed too, is I would expect the gains to be predominantly financial, but you're not talking about financial gains. So how would you create a vibrant Main Street? Could you create a vibrant Main Street with no economic change, but have a perception change? In other words, is money completely irrelevant?
No, because what you're really on a continuum to try to get to the money.
Right.
And so there are strategies that we teach that you can develop vibrancy before you have a market. And so say you have all vacant buildings, then you might use art to make those buildings come alive. You might convince a landlord to do a pop-up shop, and even though nobody's paying rent. And so there's all this way to create vibrancy before there's actual financial investment.
Right. But eventually there's your timer. We have one more minute. I give it 9 so we can wrap up in another minute. So, but in the end, they do want an economic change.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Is it the only thing that they want in the end, if like
No.
5 years forward?
No. Because the civic pride piece is very important.
Are you looking at all at, like, new families coming into communities, people choosing community as a place where they want to purchase property? Like, we have like a UNH State Work Play initiative, so I was just wondering if that's ever part of that.
It certainly could be, but we haven't. And we haven't to the other, we haven't looked at the change in property value.
I'm not pushing on that, I'm just curious.
I would say that community leaders would say the civic pride piece is part of how we sell our community. It's our front door. It's how people think of us. And so if there is a relationship between investment in residential property and even visitors or tourists.
But I think the challenge is, and the challenge for you is to figure out, saying something to measure, right, is who's supposed to feel good about it? The people that already live there and want it to be better, or the people that they think should live there and want to recruit, right? If you don't have anybody else from the outside saying, oh, this is a great place and I want to go, then you're really just doing things to make yourself happy, which may or may not be worthwhile, but it's really kind of hard to measure.
Some communities want that.
I know lots of people that live in my town who hate the town and they're still going to live there and they're not going to move. So the question is, what is the change that you're actually trying to?
Well, the unintended consequences are really about Portsmouth, right? So very vibrant, but people have been there forever, don't like the vibrancy because they're getting priced out or it's changing what it used to be. It's just interesting.
Right, and concern about gentrification. And
Right.
so this model and what we teach is really for the communities that are on that other end of that spectrum. Where do we start? There are other models that you would work with a Portsmouth
And
or a
that's-
Boston.
That's where you have different personas too, right?
Yeah.
You've got a business owner that loves what's happening. You've got a taxpayer that might not enjoy what's happening. And then you've got the politicians, right, on the civic side that they're trying to balance the two, right? So it's,
And you've defined, as you filled this out, you defined the customer as the town. So I assume a board of selectmen, a town administrator or something like that, because it would look very different. So the one comment that I'll make to wrap up is, much like the first one, fewer words. Try to get down to the essence of something as opposed to, because the more things you list doesn't mean you have a better idea of what you're doing, right? Honestly, I always feel like the fewer things, fewer words means you're sort of crystallizing the idea into the nut of something that you can really understand. Yeah, but is there any last comments on anything before we go? All right, good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Who's next? You're now thinking. All right.
I think so, Beth, did you?
30 seconds. Yeah, go ahead, I got you.
Oh,
Beth, is there a team that's not here whose representatives are on the Zoom call?
So Valerie's here, but Crystal is on, she's on the call, I think she is.
I thought she was gonna call in, but I don't know if she is.
Yeah, I don't see, and then, Jason is on the call for.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He was having a little difficulty.
All right, fire away.
All right.
Well, as soon as it shows up. All right, good.
Baby steps.
Oh, look, fewer words.
Good already. This might be too little words.
We'll figure it out.
So again, my name is Chris Hollis. I'm Tiger. This is Tiger. We are the team for Ambrosia Fabrics, and we're developing non-toxic performance fabrics for the furniture industry. Recently, through this program, I had the opportunity to go down to High Point for the High Point market, which, if you're not familiar, it's probably the largest furniture market in the United States. About 70,000 people come out. Ton of showrooms. Didn't make it to probably an eighth of them in the 2 days I was there, but got a lot of feedback and a lot of insight, specifically on furniture brands and furniture manufacturers, and how they're responding to the issues that I'm, proposing a solution for. So it was interesting. I really started, I just started in the tallest building there, started approaching people and asking them questions on what feedback they were getting or what they were doing right now. Stop.
Who's your customer?
Furniture manufacturers. Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah. So again, asking them questions, if they were receiving questions from customers or merchandising departments of retailers about certain chemical usages on the fabrics. And what I understood pretty quickly was that the brands that were at the lower price spectrum really weren't getting any questions about it at all. And a lot of them, were very quick to tell me that, no, we haven't gotten the question before. Nobody talks about it. Nobody mentions it. People mostly buy for price, which was kind of what I was expecting. And then I started reaching out to companies and brands that were of the very high price point, and we're talking about $12,000 to $15,000 sectionals. And those people told me, no, people buy for look. They do not buy for, is it sustainable? Does it contain chemicals? But the window in between the $2,000 price point for a sofa to about $10,000 price point for a sofa, those people were a little more reactive to the questions. And when I started bringing up the question of, do people ask about chemicals on the fabrics? Do you receive anything like that? A lot of people brought up Prop 65, which California is big on right now, because now, whether people knew it before or whether they didn't know it before, they're going to know now if a fabric has a certain chemical that's on that list, which I think probably.
All right, so stop.
Yeah.
Okay. So your customers are, and I'm going to rephrase your answer, which you said furniture manufacturers, and that's upholstered furniture manufacturers.
That's correct. Yeah, yes, that's correct.
We're defining down who you're talking to. So it's not, if I'm making a table, you're irrelevant, right? So that's upholstered.
Right, absolutely.
So you just said the low end of the market doesn't care and the high end of the market doesn't care, but the market in the middle seems to care a little.
Right.
Why?
It's usually because they have a little more flexibility in terms of price. If a company's putting out a sofa that you're going to walk into a furniture showroom and see for $500 or $600.
I'm gonna stop you. So
Yes.
fantastic. You went to this high point, did you buy anything? But we'll talk about that. So
They wouldn't let me.
I feel like the answer you're giving now is what you think, not what you heard.
Yeah.
What, when they said, you know, somebody's asked for it, did you say why? What did the customer tell you? Because I think that's your question,
That's
right,
what I'm
Mark?
trying to get at, yeah.
Not what you think, what did they say?
Right. I didn't ask why.
There you go.
Yeah. I
Thank
didn't
you.
ask why for that
Okay,
answer.
I want to.
Yeah.
That's important, right? Why?
Right.
So if you didn't ask them why, what were you asking?
I was asking them, what do you show them now? If somebody asks the question, you know, looking for something that doesn't have the chemicals, how do you respond to the question? What products are you looking at right now that, I guess, answer that question, answer that solution? Okay. Those are the types of questions I was asking. Okay. A lot of them gave me the feedback that, you know, we go back to our supplier, we go back to the manufacturer, and we say, hey, does this have chemicals on it? You know, one person in particular told me they just call them whenever they get the question. They usually call the manufacturer, whoever it might be, what the brand is, or whoever the supplier of the fabric is, and they ask them, does this contain these chemicals on it? And the usual response is no, they don't. But they don't really have.
So what does that tell you?
That there's not. They're not. I mean, it comes back to me, like, you know, from like the furniture manufacturer, that they're not really, I guess, getting the question as frequently that they would go out and say, okay, we need to, you know, get a certification behind this, or it's saying that there's really I'm not going to say there's no solution out there to this, but they're not really investing into it yet.
Okay. So do you have a solution in search of a problem?
Yes.
That's not a great place to be in. You want to solve a problem, you know, you want a problem that's worth solving, right? This is why we're focusing on the problem. So I think one of the challenges is you have something you think is going to work, but there's no one's telling you that this is an issue for them right now.
Right.
Or, you know, you're asking the wrong questions, and so you're not actually getting at the issue, because I suspect it maybe is an emerging problem. So one of the things to look at, if you just look at the customer jobs as you wrote it, right? That doesn't tell me anything about your customer base. Right? So if I bought anything that had this shirt, I would like it to wear well, be cleanable, and resist stains.
Right.
But it's not a couch.
Right.
And so that's not telling us anything specific about the need for the customer. And so I think what you're doing, which is about to get out a little bit, is you're answering your own questions and not the questions of the people that you're trying to serve.
Right.
So, you know, what did you learn? So you went down there. What did you learn from all these different people? What is the problem that they actually have?
Sure.
The answer can be, I didn't ask them. And that part of this thing is,
Well,
if you
I
don't have
mean,
the answer, then say I don't have it. Don't
well,
have to
I mean, did I ask them the question, what's the problem you're having right now? I didn't ask that question.
So that is a great first question to ask anybody, is what
Right.
is the problem? I mean, you could, you know, we know that you have a specific thing you're trying to do,
Right.
but, you know, what challenges are in this industry? What's the challenge with fabric? What do people talk about? That's kind of the fundamental seminal thing.
It'd be interesting, I don't know the answer, but I think about, you know, the classic ice block when the refrigerators were coming out. That if you went and had the same conversation, some of it leads me to believe that they could be in denial. That they have a whole system that makes synthetic couches, that's their bread and butter, they know how to do it, that there could be a deniability of a pending market. I don't know how you drill down to that unless you actually ask the final customer who's buying the couch, but.
Well, yeah, or you go the other way and talk to the fabric manufacturers and not the upholsterer. I mean, not, you know, the people selling the couch. Right. Because they're like, whatever. Like, if you tell me this is great and it is made of unicorn tears, fine. If somebody wants to pay for it, that's great. But
Did
maybe.
you get to talk to any of the textile providers when you were down there?
I did not. No, I did not. I don't think there weren't a lot of them down there, because their show's actually coming up this next month.
They were there.
Yeah.
They were in the crowd.
Yeah, they're looking around.
They may not have had a booth.
Yeah. Right.
Their thing is in the next month.
Yeah, there's another show which is specifically for fabric. That's gonna be up at the last weekend in November.
Can you go to that?
So I think I'm gonna use up all the I-4 funds.
$1,000 next Thursday.
I think you should, yeah.
Right.
No, because I do think, you know, and people struggle with this is remember we talked a couple weeks ago, I said, this is not an equation for you to solve.
Right.
You're not trying to like, this plus this equals my answer. You got a minute left. I think what you've done is you're not, the right side does not reflect what you heard.
Right.
It reflects what you want to hear. And you got to get what people actually want, not what you want them to want, or this whole process doesn't work for you.
Yeah,
Right.
is there any consumer demand, right? I mean, is that kind of what we're,
I think so. I mean,
Right.
so the gist of what you're doing is you have this natural fabric that has all these wonderful features and is sustainable, right? Roughly.
Right.
So do the textile manufacturers care about sustainability? Do they care about chemistry? Do they care about all these stuff? Where is your market? Because most textile manufacturing is not in the United States. So
Right.
where is the market? And does that market care about it? You know, not even talking about price, but just talking, is this an issue that matters to people? And
yeah, even some initial Google analytics on, I mean, are people searching for quote unquote organic furniture or upholstery?
sustainable upholstery.
Yes, whatever that might be. I think that's really important because if there's no demand, then I could see a pivot from
Although what's interesting, Chris, is that you started this journey because you worked at a furniture store and you listened to customers coming in and saying, is there anything else? So, but then you jump to the other side of who's making that. So you heard some, I don't know how deep that is.
And it's another persona thing, right?
Yeah,
We've got the furniture, we've got the manufacturer, we've got the dealer, and we've got the consumer who, again, is that really the customer or not? Right?
Right.
At the end of the day, who's buying this thing?
Last dollar.
I'm sorry.
Exactly.
You guys have all seen The Devil Wears Prada, like the movie. Remember the scene where she just rips her one about the cerulean blue and how it wound up being because we blah, 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 blah. I mean, it could be something like that.
Right.
Where I think I make a choice, but actually.
Right. The choice was
Right. I wonder about interior designers, if this is a high-end thing, they're the ones saying to their customer, this is what's, this is what you want in your living room.
And remember, what we're not saying is that this isn't a good idea.
Right. No,
What we're trying to get to is, are you asking the right questions of the right people so that if you're taking this, and this is something you're serious about, I know that, but that you're taking an educated step and not a step based on the faith that you're right and that if you build it, they will come, because that's how people lose a lot of money. Right? This is just focus in. I think if you've got a chance to go to that fabric thing in a month or so,
Right.
figure out how to get there, start for the next week, think about that, like focus in on the fabric and focus in on that as the job and what needs to happen there.
Right.
So, because obviously right now, you could sit on a couch that wears well, is cleanable and resists stains. So the functionality of what you're offering or what you think you can offer is already there. So what is it about sustainability that makes somebody make a different choice? Because in the end, this is about, can you convince a customer, take out their wallet and give you their money because of what you told them?
Right.
Right? So right now that doesn't tell me that's already been satisfied. Teflon and all the chemicals satisfies that job. So I don't think you actually have the job that they need done down right. Okay, let's shift. Thank you.
He's halfway through.
Yeah.
Everybody?
Okay. So
I'm Jared Reynolds, and along with Stephen Nino, we're doing this Innovate New Hampshire. So we kind of started from scratch a little bit the past few weeks.
Restarted or?
Well, not restarted. We took a bit of a different approach. So we shared a couple weeks ago. We were thinking a little bit too big, so we had to like hone in.
Yeah.
And it took a bit of a different direction than I think I would initially thought we would. So we decided to focus more on local government innovation, been interviewing local governments to get
Just describe what you're trying to do first.
Our goal overall, I think, is like, why are local governments, so now, why are local governments not implementing projects? Like, what is
What kind of project?
barrier that, so I'd say mostly we're focused on economic development projects, but but taking still sort of like a bigger picture. So we've honed in on that. So starting on our, where should I start? Over
Start
here
with
on
the
page.
jobs. What do, and who is your customer?
Our customer is, we've been interviewing both like local government employees, like a town administrator or city manager, but also people on committees. So that would be like our mentor. Also, Stephen is like on the Kittery Economic Development Committee. So he would
So ask again, who is your customer, not who did you talk to?
yeah. So it would be local government. So
Okay. So what the jobs are, what your customer needs done. What did they tell you they needed done?
so they are looking for, so what, like for project implementation, that is what they want to do, is figure out how to do that.
Is it?
Yes, I think. What do you mean?
What do they want done?
So I guess up top, I have like their most basic task is to manage government and figure out how to do these other tasks while simultaneously being able to do that.
Ask a different way. What are they trying to do? Like you picked a project with a particular point of view. Your customer is the town. I'll just say the town.
Yeah.
What do they want? What is the job they want done?
I mean, they want to, so what is the job our customers want done?
What does the town want that you think you have a way to solve?
Implement projects and grow their economy and make residents happy.
I'm going to take the first part off and leave the second part. They want to increase their economy. They want the economy. That's the job.
Yeah.
What those towns want done is they want their economies to grow.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm poking at that is you're describing how to do it, not what they want done. So managing a committee is how one does some specific piece of that task. It's not the quintessence of what they want done.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just, it's just, you're really trying to get to the truth, the nugget of truth that they have. So, okay, towns are your customer. They want economic development done.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So their pains are, I pull out a couple of key ones that I hear the most. One is time. So like, how do I do this with limited time? Politics.
I'm going to stop you again. So if they want economic development done, the pain is what happens if that's not done.
Okay. I guess I was looking at the
I know.
pains, like what
That's
is
why
missing.
that's why I'm restating it for you. So if their economic growth doesn't happen, what is the pain?
Residents are unhappy.
Sure. Is there any, just look on your list. So
They don't get funding.
funding for what? They don't, is this tax revenue again?
Yeah, so
Okay.
tax revenue is stagnant.
Okay.
They can't fund services they want to fund.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so I guess underneath residents aren't happy is funding of services,
Yeah.
tax rates.
Okay. And then the reason, again, just this is for everybody, I'm restating these in a specific way because that's then focusing on it's focusing on them.
Okay, so I
And
kinda
then-
did this wrong. So
and
if
then-
that
it's
is
okay.
done, their gains are,
What is the benefit that they get by having the job complete?
they get more flexibility to implement new services.
Yeah.
implement their
I mean,
taxes, they
And
get-
you have growth and you have, I think you were on target in the top, less so on the bottom. So they get increased services, economic growth. Talk to me about functioning committees, because you've got committees in a couple places. This seems like something, so tell me why it's up there.
Like, the challenge that during our interviews people talk about is like, when I talk to the town administrator, that it's sort of like out of their control. They're sort of delegated.
Just so everybody can hear.
They've delegated these tasks off, kind of,
Okay.
to non-functioning committees. So they're looking for that
Ah.
structure.
Okay. Is that the reason why they don't get growth? Because committees can't function?
Yeah, well, I think it's a contributing factor.
What do they tell you? Don't tell me what you think. Tell me what they tell you.
Yeah, they say that. Yeah, like other people aren't doing this.
Okay.
Like this is this other person's job, and they're not doing that.
Okay, so now I get the managed committees. Okay. A little bit.
Okay, we're next.
I don't want to get to the square. We'll get there next week because I just want to focus in on that problem. So you did, how many interviews have you done?
So we've probably done like 15 interviews, but a lot of them have not been really under this local government focus.
Okay, so what did you talk to them about? You're doing all these interviews. What do you talk about? And who are you talking to?
Yeah, so my questions are, so we've talked to local government leaders and volunteers. Have been the two people.
Okay.
And my questions are, like, what's your goals? What's a project that's been successful and what made that successful? What are the barriers? I've tried to get a sense of like what their vision is, and then where they've been successful, where they haven't been successful, and why they haven't been successful.
Okay.
Like, is there a time where like something worked out well in your community?
Sure.
What was the contributing factor to that? To try to get a sense of like where that disparity is.
So thinking, just being a little more relaxed. You talked to 15 people about this issue. What did you learn that you didn't know?
Yeah. So what was most surprising to me, I mean, in hindsight, it's not as surprising, but I put it up there as the time. It's like, how do I allocate my time? Like, I would love to implement new ideas, but that means I have to give something up. So how do I break down that barrier and make it easy for me? It's sort of been
You're not talking about you, you're talking about the people you talk to. You're channeling their response, or are you talking about, okay, I'm just
They talk about time, they talk about politics. Like, it's almost that risk of,
so is it time or is it priorities?
yeah, it's priorities. Like, I have limited time, how do I allocate this time?
Okay, so what question, go ahead.
I was just gonna, so can you be a little more specific on what you mean by a town? And I'm not trying to be flip.
Yeah.
But there's towns and towns and towns. So can you describe to us better, like the size of the town, because I'm, in my head, I'm at, Hampstead, right, versus Portsmouth.
Yeah, I would say
Towns, right?
mostly smaller towns,
So what
so
does smaller mean?
like 4 to 8,000.
4 to 8,000. Okay, because that's me implies.
So more like 2 to 8,000.
Okay, but that implies a lot about their town government, right?
Yeah.
Right? So is the town person who has no time, that's not their job. They have a regular job, right? A full-time job paying somebody, right?
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's a full-time employee, but then also time of a volunteer.
Yeah, I think that's.
You want to
No.
get the picture of now time or priorities has a little more context.
Right.
For me anyway.
Yeah.
When I think of a small town.
Right. And that's defining your customer much more concrete. I mean, everybody's doing it, right? So let's try to get you down into that more specific thing that you can speak to, because like Ian said the last time, Portsmouth has a fundamentally different challenge with economic development than Berlin or whatever, right? So why isn't economic development a priority?
I think it is a priority, but it's not happening. So I guess this is
So I'll call bullshit on that for a moment because, and this isn't you.
Yeah, so I guess
this isn't you, this is them, right? If it's a priority, you fund what you prioritize. So if it's a priority for them, they do it. If it's not a priority, they don't do it. I think what you're trying to figure out is why do they say it's a priority but never do anything, right?
Yeah.
So keep. You got a minute left, so keep.
Yeah.
You were about to say something.
So I guess that's why I've been trying to like, what's the reason that it's not happening? And I guess that's really what I put under pains is what people have been saying is that reason.
Yeah. How do you solve it? I'm not asking you to say what you want to do, but like, is there an easy solution for that? Do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, I mean, I think there are ways we can like chip away at the edges and break down some barriers.
So one of the things for next week is, because we'll shift to the second side of this next week a little bit, trying to see where you are, is maybe what's the one thing they need? So when you, and this happened a couple times, you have this, the job is economic development. Well, holy crap, that's a huge thing. That can, some people say that's about bringing new businesses in. Some people say it's about cleaning up the streets. Some people say it's about horizontal and not vertical parking spaces. Just different people are going to give a different answer to that question. And so trying to narrow it down to like, what individual part of that do you think is something that you can chip away at? So getting a little more specific. Are there any, this stuff is a little more diffuse because you're trying to make change. But I think what happens, so to me, when somebody says, I don't have time, that's like a vanity metric. It's a false answer because that's the excuse. I don't have any time. Well, if you want it done, why aren't you doing it? And I think maybe trying to drill down on that. Why is this not something you are spending your time on? And you may come to the conclusion that there literally isn't any time because they're in meetings and town meeting and all of this stuff, which means maybe they shouldn't talk about wanting to grow economic development until they have a resource that they can apply to it, right? It's just about, it may be a problem, but if they're not active, we talked about this week one, it can absolutely be a problem they perceive to have. But if they're not funding it or resourcing it, then it's not a problem because they're not actually trying to solve it. There's no negative consequence of not doing it yet. It's only when towns go in crisis that they say, oh, we got to spend time, we got to hire Main Street Academy to come in and tell us what to do, right?
Brilliant idea.
We don't tell them what to do.
Maybe you guys should just combine your ideas.
I think they're very different ideas, actually.
All right, cool, great, thank you. Where'd you guys go? So we're moving from economic development to technology.
So Mark, before you say it, it's wordy.
Yeah,
Very wordy.
good, thank you for self-correcting.
For fear of not giving enough, I gave too much, but I won't do that. And I also took a non-conventional approach of showing it because I'm sorry, I really didn't like that doing it in the circle. So I just took it off and separated it. So brief background, our kind of product or project is looking at a reusable sensor to be implemented in line of a biological process. Our customer base, we kind of, if you want to say, pivoted a little bit. At first, we were looking more into diagnostics, and now we're looking more into biologics engineering. So just so that people, like, you understand what is going on here, a brief background of what that actually entails is, say you're looking at kind of a biological engineering process. You take some sort of raw material, you culture it in some way, and then you put it through some reaction. It could be fermentation, it could be a bioreactor, to get some sort of product that you're interested in, and then you can extract or isolate that product and purify it. And in a lot of steps in that process, there's a lot of quality control that happens to ensure that, throughout that process, your process is as efficient as possible, and you're going to come up with a quality product. So our kind of customer that we're interested in is the industrial manufacturing of biologics. So that could be an active ingredient in a drug, or it could be a cell or a particular component of a cell. And more specifically, we're looking at process development and quality control of that manufacturing. So some of the customer tasks that are kind of accompanying that particular segment would include evaluating the product or process and quality control. So that has to do with essentially upstream of the process. They look at different measurements, different parameters within their process. And then based on the output or the feedback that they get from those parameters, they then readjust the process downstream based on that product feedback. That helps them evaluate the efficiency of their process. And then, like I said, they also perform those actual process operation adjustments based on that feedback. And then there's also the biological process development where they're trying to implement different procedures in line to better create a more efficient process or better automate their process.
So let's stop you for a second. So you said you were going to be really quick, but that was 3.5 minutes of the 10, right? So time goes by really quickly. Okay. So in terms of these tasks, I'm going to try to jam everything you just said down into about 5 seconds, which is biotech companies need to inline detect a substance for quality control or whatever they want. It could be quality for whatever.
Yeah.
Inline detect a signal for a process. Okay. That's the generic version of what you're doing, right? Yes. So, and the reason why I said that is, so are all of these things on your customer tasks or the jobs, is that the same customer? Or is that, these are your different applications for the idea to different customers?
Good question. I would say it's the same customer. So it's like different, you can almost consider it as like, this is a job position within a company, a customer, and then this is a job position within
Okay.
a customer.
So that then the thing they want to do is they just want to detect. They want to detect a signal.
For quality.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then the pain is if they are not able to detect that signal in line for quality purposes, then what happens?
So, what's the first one I had?
What bad thing happens?
So, they have some issues with actually implementing inline sensors based on the operating conditions of the sensor. So, things like it can't handle heat or cooling, or it corrodes really easily, prevents them from actually putting it in line. Quality sensors, so sensors that measure like chemical cues in a substance, they're typically done offline. And when you do it offline, you you delay that feedback that you get, which prevents you from optimizing your process immediately.
So let me stop you. Is your assumption, and it is an assumption, that every biological process wants an inline detection method?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know that that's a valid thing to assume?
Well, that's what we're testing.
Wait. That's not what, I'm sort of with this team.
Yeah.
That isn't the belief that everybody wants inline. What do they want? They want what? What's the measurable thing they want that you've been talking about? They want the product at a high yield that they've been paid to create.
Okay. Yeah.
No, but I mean, they don't wake up, I wish I had an inline measure.
No, you're right. This would be like in order for them to achieve that. No,
So this, you want to start with this, the core pain that somebody feels, and then you can describe how it shows up.
Okay.
Is that fair?
That makes sense. Yeah. I got sidetracked there. Yeah. So the biggest thing is they're wanting a very quality product and a high yield.
So, and that's important to them. So, and then there's some other potential pain, right?
Right. So it basically goes, they want a good, like a really quality product, a way to ensure that their product is quality through quality control. That typically happens through quality measurements throughout the process. And so our assumption is that applying an inline sensor that's reusable will allow them for better quality. And so some of the, some of the pains of not having an inline sensor to measure quality is that it prevents them from creating an efficient process to have the most quality product.
So I make junk, and I shouldn't have to have made junk.
Right.
Just be late, right? I mean, if I can't do it quickly, I have the risk of making junk.
Right.
Right?
And another thing too is, and this is also a pain that they had, is if they can't measure it in line when it's actually happening and they get variation in their product quality, they don't understand why they got variation as well. So that's a problem that they have with not being able to test certain quality parameters in line.
Yeah. You touched on the speed issue, right? So you keep saying like it's faster if you do it inline, it's more efficient if you do it inline. But I haven't heard you say that that's like a pain or something that your customer is really trying to accomplish. Like, do they care about time?
Yes. So that's the whole issue with the delayed feedback. A lot of current biological processes, for example, that use bioreactors, their offline measurements, it's usually different techniques like HPLC, GMS, or GCMS, which are basically you take your sample and you go put it in a different instrument, and it takes a couple hours for them to get any results. And so once they get those results, they no longer, their process is further on. So it's harder to tell where the current real-time state of the system when the measurements you got are 2 hours behind.
You just used two words that are really important, real time.
Yeah.
It's embedded in what you're thinking. I'm sorry to cut you off. That's the issue.
Right.
The time it takes you to take something off, detect it, the train is already gone. You cannot stop fermentation. Yeah. You wouldn't stop a process to wait. You wouldn't like ferment something, stop it, measure it, come back, restart it. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Might have to scrap all that
Yeah.
at your cost.
So
we just had a customer discovery interview this morning that talked about that a little bit. How there's some bioreactors, for some processes of backlog. 2 years, he said, for some sort of processing in some companies. And
right.
So you scrap a single process, which typically will take a couple months, sometime in the middle.
Right. I think that you should make sure you articulate that timepiece clearly when you talk to people that you're pitching.
Okay. I'm sorry, can you?
I think that like this real time thing that Mark hammered on too, as in terms of more product, more efficiently, right, without,
That's kind of like the golden phrase, like use that to my advantage more so.
Got a minute. I think, and I used to run a biotech company. So, you're talking about really expensive things that if you fail, you're wasting tens of millions of dollars.
And they have certain parameters that tell them the quality. Like I said, the biggest issue is that they're offline. And so that time consumption is really where we might be able to leverage them.
Just one more big thing, right, that you found that can happen when the way they have to test now. What is the risk that happens?
Yeah, so that we didn't get to that, but another thing with offline sampling is you have to take it out so it makes an open system. And when you have an open system, you potentially expose the entire process to contamination. Not an issue with like clean rooms, but when you have certain processes that don't occur in clean rooms, you could potentially contaminate your entire process. And that's super time consuming and super expensive. So inline measurements kind of closes the system and would prevent that. So that was the other kind of aspect we didn't quite get to.
So I think the gain, with 15 seconds left before this thing goes off again, I think the gains you've got, those are pretty straightforward, and I think those are great. The task is, inline measurement of, a signal. Speed they get, if they get inline measurements of that signal, they can speed up their process, an efficient process, improved quality, maybe reduced contamination based on what you said. I'm not sure you've addressed the reliability of measurements. You have contamination.
That was just something the customer said. That they wanted.
So not to be cheeky, but the less you said, the more accurate it was.
Yeah, no, I agree.
The more you said, the more you trip up on, I think, some of the stuff, and I think it's what Beth is getting at is like, again, get down to the couple of big picture things. And this is for everybody too, is I know everybody is very enthusiastically trying to do a good job and answer the questions at hand. At the core, take a step back and see, what did I learn? What did I ask? What did I learn? What do I know that I didn't know before I asked these questions? Take that and throw it into the format that we put. I think sometimes it's like, well, I gotta list a bunch of games. I gotta do this, and I get it, and I appreciate your enthusiasm for doing the process right. But sometimes it's just as easy to take a step back and just answer a simple question. If I said, what did you learn from your 15 interviews or 5 interviews or whatever it was? Give me 10 seconds. What did you learn that you didn't know last week? What did you learn this morning in your call that you didn't know before your call?
That a lot of people are still looking for inline sensors, but don't necessarily know how to implement them.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to raise the issue that what you're doing very correctly is you've got a very complex buying situation where that industry or that group that would buy this process has a lot of different people having a lot of very different needs.
Yeah.
And you've got to satisfy and make sure that those needs are compatible and that one group is not fighting the other, that you've increased throughput, but you've ruined quality, vice versa, because they have different interests and were rewarded for different things.
Yeah.
And also understanding the patterns between the different people you're talking to. You know, you talk to so many people, and that's the problem with, you know, this is you get such a high frequency of input from these people. Being more, you know, simple will help you kind of identify those patterns instead
So
of getting.
I'm gonna ask you one final question. Who is your customer?
I would say, like I said, industrial manufacturers.
Write it down. Who's your customer?
Say for
I'm in HR and an industrial manufacturer. Am I your customer?
no, it'd be process development teams and quality control.
QA/QC. Right. Yep. Because then you can ask them questions about process development and quality. You know,
Yeah.
it's implied, but that's, you know, your customer is the QA/QC team in a biotech company with a continuous process. You can get that if you're trying to stop it midstream, right? If you're detecting midstream.
I think, though, McKenna's first identification of process development team, because the reality is QA/QC isn't going to buy inline sensors at this time. They don't.
They're not worried about
They don't exist, and so they don't even think of it as possible, and they don't even identify as
What doesn't exist?
inline sensors.
No. People
So-
in a QC, QA function exist. I think that's what.
No, but they're not the customer base.
I would challenge you to think
Yes.
about the role they play, because remember, there's buyers, end users, influencers, decision makers.
I still think the better.
No, it's not better. It's all of them influence things. That's.
I definitely think they tie because you learn from quality control. So the problems that they're having might be what the process development team is trying to actually fix. So I think you can learn from different things from both teams.
It isn't so much, just one last thing, so manufacturing kind of person. It isn't just learning, right? They have a function, they have a go, no go, they have great influence, regardless of how they're doing it. I'm just saying, think of them as a part of the ecosystem that happens, right?
Right. No, we were talking about ecosystems.
Oh.
Right. No, it's true. I mean, and in the end, in a biotech company, the PD, the process development folks are going to tell QA/QC what to measure.
Yes.
So they're not unrelated, and it has to work on the back end too. So, okay, great. You guys want to go?
Yes.
Well, I think Tim's presenting.
All right, Tim. You can unmute.
I am here. Yep,
All right.
I'm here.
All right, you're on the clock. Go. Remember, just
All
remind
right.
everybody what this is. I know you talked a little bit at the beginning, but go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So again, you know, the IOL is a testing company for connected devices. Generally, think of things that are on the internet. So in this case, we're looking at new protocols that are being actively developed by standards bodies. You know, actively developed, you know, basically invented. And sort of our job as a lab is to generally not to be too far ahead of new technologies, because then, you know, nobody's interested and way ahead of the curve, but also not to be too far behind the curve, because at that point, you know, nobody's interested in testing or integrating them anymore. They've already done it. So we have to find the sweet spot and figure out where we are in terms of a new protocol. As I mentioned earlier, we were previously looking at something called Quick. And the kind of interesting note that's come to life when I'm speaking to people who aren't active in the literal development of the technology itself is that they don't know what it is. They don't know why they should care. So I've actually, somewhat surprisingly, been doing some educating on some of these calls, which is not where we want to be for that particular case. On the flip side, as I mentioned earlier, TLS is sort of an integral part of that protocol. and it's sort of more broadly applicable at the same time. So it's useful to ask it in the same light and during the same conversation. What we found is that generally people are more interested. So in this case, I don't know where my slide lands on the spectrum of too many words versus too few, but looking at customer jobs where it almost always comes down to sales for us.
So Tim, who's the customer here?
Right, so the customer, this is someone selling a product, and let's see, an enterprise piece of equipment, a device, to a business who's going to use that, put it in their network. Most specifically, say a large buyer, a large acquisition body like a government agency, or a large enterprise, think insurance companies or something of the like.
What are they putting online? I still don't know what this thing does. So what is it who is what is the customer doing?
The customer is selling a product that is claiming to implement a protocol that will make the network better.
Okay.
More secure.
So be more specific. Is this a router? Is this?
Sure. Yes. Sorry, I never know exactly how specific to get down there. Yeah, it would be a router. It could be something as simple as an application that's using an internet browser. It could be a server. It could be something much more low level that's embedded. I think even a hardware that's actually got some sort of embedded code, something like a NIC that's doing offloading. It could be an app on a phone even. Good thing about TLS is it kind of applies to all of those areas. In our case, we're more specifically talking about routers and switches. Routers and switch vendors, or router and switch makers.
So I'm gonna keep going. So your customer is somebody selling routers and switches to move data around the internet, roughly.
Sure. Yep.
So the customer job is the thing that those people selling routers and switches needs done. So why do they need certification?
Is proof. So basically, I can walk up to anybody and say, "Oh, my device does this. You should buy it," and they will ask me, "Well, I don't believe you," or "That's great, but can you show me why you're saying that, or can you back that up?"
So Tim, this is Beth, you in the back here. So what happens? What's the impact if the device isn't certified? What happens to the salesperson?
Right. So, in the worst case for the salesperson, they aren't able to get on the phone because they won't even begin the conversation with their customer unless.
Wait, you're operating in a much more sophisticated zone than I'm in. If I don't have a certification, and I'm assuming the certification is for the whole class of product, not for each individual unit. Is that true?
Typically, yes. There are some exceptions, but yeah, sure. Typically.
So if it's not certified, what's the impact on me as a salesperson?
You don't get a sale.
There we go. All right, so I can't sell. So not only does the salesperson have a problem, the company has a problem because they get no revenue. Right. Is that right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, that's kind of a big thing, right? That's why they need certification in order to make sales?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It aids the sales.
Okay. So
that actually is what makes the sales possible in a lot of cases.
Standards. Right. So then I'm going to jump on top of that, and this may just be how you're describing it. So when we started, you said nobody knows this exists. But then you just said they need the certification in order to make a sale. Make those two things make sense to me.
Right. So in the case of Quick, the fact that they don't know it exists is not indicative of the broader picture. They don't know it exists, and what we're learning is a lot of people don't exist, and you're absolutely right in that front. Certification is not necessary, which is enter the, why we're sort of de-emphasizing that a little bit and turning more towards TLS. In this case, they do know it exists. They do know it's a problem, and the reason they need the certification is because the buyers know that they need TLS. So they want that proof. They want that fair playing field to determine if a product is eligible, right?
How do they get certified today versus how they get certified when you come along?
Right. So it depends on the protocol. So for something new like this, for 1.3, there's no certification that exists, right? It's sort of something that you have to convince the industry it's something to move to. For earlier protocols, you go to a lab like ours, or you run a test tool that outputs a report that gets validated, or
this is a new version of something that exists.
Well, and yes.
Okay. So why is it new, and what problem is that solving?
Right. So the reason, and the only reason I paused when I said, when you asked if it's a new version, is it's sort of a bigger evolutionary step than earlier versions. The problem it's solving is earlier versions of the protocol have sort of been taken advantage of by different segments of the industry, and they fixed a lot of perceived issues with those vulnerabilities.
Tim,
yeah,
I think you're dipping too much into the technology right now.
Yeah.
So who is not able to make sales today because they can't certify this thingy?
Nobody.
Okay. Who do you expect to have those problems? And why do you expect them to have it?
I expect, in one example, I expect those trying to sell to the U.S. government to have this problem within the next, say, 5 years.
Okay, and why do you believe it's going to be a problem for the U.S. people selling to the government? What's driving that?
The U.S. government, various agencies, DoD and others inside that, will say if you're not proving that you do this, we won't buy you.
So there's going to be, or there is a regulation or a government requirement today that hasn't made its way into the supply chain yet?
Right, not for this protocol.
Okay. So we've got a minute left, and then do we have one, Beth? Do we have one more team, or are we? Okay. Okay. So if certification doesn't happen, then the pain is they can't sell, right? They don't make money, which is related. So I don't know that matching certifications with customers is particularly a pain. And then if certification is necessary, then the benefit is faster sales. The benefit is not independent verification, I don't think. That's your benefit to them, not their benefit that they get. And I guess you could make the increased confidence in product, but that's sort of, once you get certified, that's, I guess, it's just not that compelling. And the answer might be just sales, which is, you can sell something versus you can't sell something. All right, I sort of buy that. So,
are there any requests for proposals out from the government that, are kind of like them feeling their way and asking for somebody to solve a problem in this space?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, generally, I mean, I don't have specific info on RFPs. We work with closely with those regulatory bodies to understand, what things they are interested in, what things they're going to be looking at certifying. So yes, this isn't something that's completely wild out of left field. It's something that happens, and the trick is finding the protocol or the technology that is going to be the match on both sides. One that the buyers are interested in vetting, and one that the makers think is useful to their product, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And to sort of defend the IOL a little bit, and because you were not, I don't think you were on the phone the first week, so they're down the hall. They're a third-party testing lab, and so they participate actually every cohort. And so some of the things that they try to do is figure out what is the next certification that has a customer base that they could create a consortia around. So I won't say it's different, because everybody is different and special in their own unique way, but they're approaching this from a group that's already surveying this customer base, trying to figure out whether this is going to be necessary for that industry.
Thank you. So really, they're also trying to figure out who cares, or who's
Yes.
going to care.
Who's going to care, and
Okay.
when are they going to
Okay.
care?
All right.
So, but
Right, and that was probably the big piece that I missed is really the who cares and should we bother is right on the top of the question list.
Well, the when is good too, right?
Yeah.
Because is it 36 months out, or is it next quarter?
Right.
So that's a great component as well. It would be nice to know.
yeah, I think, Tim, so just, roll back to week one, and the two big things you talked about are who cares and so what, right? So what I'd like you to do in the next week is really better articulate who the customer is, and like, if it's people who sell routers or, something that's very specific that we can all get our hands around. Don't assume that we know it. I know that this is for internal, exploration too, but it's hard for people to try to help when it's all a little bit techy. And then really try to figure out, try to better articulate what that customer, what their current problem is. And so I guess the way I'm saying it is like, so whatever this TLS thing is that whacks stuff around the internet, there is a 1.2. It's perfectly fine, or it has been perfectly fine. And what's the motivation for everybody to change? Because I don't understand that at all. And I think describing that will make the rest of this a little easier.
Yeah, thank you. That's good feedback.
All right, great. You can remute if you choose. So, okay, so just to try to wrap up, we're on time, which is pretty good. So a couple overall observations for folks is, and this is normal, right? This is the part, I think I said, maybe I didn't say it this time, but the midpoint is where you're wondering sometimes what the hell you're doing and what's the point of all of this stuff, and it feels like it's still too diffuse. And I guess what I would encourage you to do is try to simplify everything. I still see examples of people trying to make the customer needs and your solution into an equation, which we're not supposed to do. I've seen a couple examples of teams that are not actually trying to find out what their customer needs are. They're asking questions about what they want the customer to say and not what the customer has. And this whole process is again about letting go of what you walked in the door thinking to explore what people want. And then later comes whether you're solving something that you think that they need or not. And so, if you feel like you're struggling or this is really hard or why the hell are you wasting your time, that's a normal part of the process a little bit. So just have a little patience with it. The solution to those things, unfortunately, is to continue to go out and talk to more people. Because that is honestly the only way that you solve the problem is by getting not an N of 2 or 4, but an N of 10 or 15 or 20. And to really, Beth said it earlier, is really get down to that the question why, you can ask that too much, but sometimes that's the simplest question. Why are you telling me that? What does that mean? Why is that your response? Until you get to that real problem. It's not unusual to find out that there isn't a problem. You just wish there was one. And it's better to find that out early than late. And I'm not speaking about any particular thing, just that, when you get uncomfortable, steer into the uncomfortable. Don't steer away from the uncomfortable, because that's where you're going to learn something. So next week, I just would say we're going to do this again. I'm going to try to split. We don't have a lot of time in these sessions, 10 minutes a pop. I'm going to try to get a little more on the customer jobs, but then want to start getting to the thing that you do, and try to see how those things match up. Beth, we want to do the quick.
Right, so 3 minutes, that's all you're getting. 3 minutes. I think McKenna really hammered up like that. You're just that one side of your thing is 3.5. So figure it out.
Yeah.
What are you doing? What did you learn through I-Core? What's your value proposition?
Right.
That's it.
Yeah. So we'll do that, but then we'll get a little. So we're going to start off each with your 3-minute pitch, and then we'll get 7 more minutes to kind of poke a little bit.
Yeah.
Use your mentors. If you have questions, feel free to ask us, and keep plugging. Thank you.
Thank you.